As you saw on the screen there, SmiteTactics.com. Head over there to sign up for the beta of the latest game coming out of hi-rez Studios sometime soon, hopefully. Joining us on the desk, obviously, is Tolly again, and this time the coach of Saw, Ionic. Ionic, once upon a time, a very famous support player. How's it feel being a coach these days, Ionic?
I get to dress a lot nicer.
You do look very handsome, I must say.
Thank you, thank you. It's definitely a lot more relaxing, I would say. It's a lot of stress being a player, so I'm definitely happy with my role on the team.
Well, before we go back to the next set of the day, which is going to be Denial up against EnVy as well, how do you think set one went for you guys overall?
I think it went really well. I'm super happy with the way everyone played. We always tend to play a lot better on stage than we do in scrims, so I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
Tell me how you guys prepared against EnVyUs, because you guys just dominated them so quickly. Normally in the last couple of weeks, the teams in the first set are kind of dragging it on, but it seems that you guys had a clear game plan going into that set.
I don't think it was so much the preparation as it was us just executing really well. We tried to prepare. We took away Athena, which I think is Mike's most comfortable land pick, and other than that, we didn't really have much to go off of since there was such a long break in between excuse me, in between games. So yeah, it was just more executing really well, I would say.
And execution paid off for them. The 2-0 went the way of Saw. Now EnVy, they've got an interesting task here. They're going to have to face against Denial now, Totally, as well. Denial looks pretty interestingly strong online, surprisingly enough.
I would say so. They've definitely been one of those out of the top 3 packs of the team. They've always just been placing 1 seed out of LAN, but now with the team, the roster apocalypse out of Enemy and out of Soar, they've developed a really strong, formidable roster. And against EnVyUs now, despite losing that last set, EnVyUs is a little bit warmed up, but on the flip side, Denial did have a little bit of strategies that they saw that EnVyUs ran.
Yeah, obviously, your first game at LAN, Denial are going to come into this for the first time. They've got a few players who've been to LAN before, but not for a while for some of them as well. How difficult is it? I mean, you're one of the most experienced players we've had before. How difficult is it, that first game, when you get into it?
I would say, well, for me anyway, when I was playing at LAN, as soon as I got into the game, I was completely zoned in. You just have to not let playing on stage get into your head at all. And for some players, it's easy. For some players, obviously, it's a little more difficult. So it really just varies player to player.
And following up on that, obviously you're gonna face Denial later on today. What are the strengths that you can see out of Denial, and what the kind of weaknesses that they need to look out for?
I would say Denial's strengths definitely their mid jungle combo. Homiefe, extremely strong player. As long as Hurriwind can shake the land nerves that he showed at DreamHack, I think you look to them too for being their strongest players.
And Hurriwind, I mean, obviously, Tolly, we see Hurriwind play so far before. He's very consistent in the mid lane for the most part. Land nerves definitely do hit him, though, and he kind of showed that at DreamHack as well.
He's been playing a lot with Homiefe for quite a while, back in their COG days, I believe it was. And there's a lot of synergy there between the mid and jungle. And back to the DreamHack Smite Masters, like you mentioned, he had some on and off games, but I think from the most part, coming from the online phase, he's definitely stepped it up, I would say.
Yeah.
How important is it, the synergy between the mid lane and jungle Ionic as well? I mean, now everyone talks about it. Is it really core to Smite right now? Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely not easy to switch. As you saw last season with EnVy, we kind of had a rotating door of mid jungle, and if you can't have that really concrete mid laner plus jungler, they're definitely 2 tough roles to play. And if you're playing with someone that you're really comfortable with, like Homie played with Hurriwind on Soar previously as well. So that synergy there is really important, especially for the first 3 minutes of the game, the first mid harpies. Really important that you're really comfortable with.
You mentioned as well that you were on EnVy for a little while there as well, so you know Kiki in the mid lane, his opposition here today. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to play against him with Kiki.
Kiki's God pool is definitely a little strange. You'll never really see him pull out the Janus, but I think this meta is sort of leaning towards him since it's the healing meta. Aphrodite's kind of coming back into the meta. Ra's coming back into the meta, and you just saw him play the Chang'e. So I'd say he's definitely a little bit more passive, but he's definitely a very good role player for the team.
Do you feel these are unconventional, though, Totally, these picks that we see from Kiki? Obviously, we call them unconventional, but can they really work?
It fits his style because he likes these defensive gods, not necessarily all the time sustain gods. Sometimes he'll pull out the Nuwa, and going into the Cupid that last game around didn't really work out for them, considering the fact that how aggressive Anister was in that last game. It definitely backfired, but he needs to figure out a way to synergize a little bit better with Skeeledon, because that Cupid pick just didn't seem like it worked out that last game.
Yeah, your opinion, just on like the mid picks that we see Kiki come out with. I mean, seems to work for him, but it doesn't work in the competitive environment, though.
Yeah, it does work for him. I would like to see him gravitate towards more conventional picks. I think Janus especially is a really strong pick that he doesn't really have in his god pool.
And he is supportive, too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I would say it definitely does hurt EnVy as a whole. His kind kind of small niche god pool.
Well, Kiki's a lovely guy in the scene. A lot of players had a lot of nice things to say about him. Let's listen to some of those.
Kiki definitely has a strange god pool. I would say that Kiki's like really similar to MLC's Stealth, except maybe even a little bit weirder. Like he likes to pull out like the Athena mids and like the chalks, and I think it's a lot harder for a team to play around those things as opposed to like an MLC Stealth situation.
Kiki's a mid that like likes to play very weird gods. He probably has the most unique god pool in the SPL. He usually goes for like support kind of gods, you know, like the Afro and the Chunga. I don't think he'll ever like carry a game, but he'll never like lose his team a game. He knows his role in his team and he plays it very well.
Now that the meta's opened up a little bit and you can kind of play like almost any character in mid, I think now that he's able to actually play the gods he's good at, he's a lot more consistent. I think he's a very safe player, but if you play into him incorrectly, he will punish you for that.
I think mid is where Kiki belongs. I'm really glad he's able to play that, and I think being with Skeeledon and both of them kind of improving off of each other makes EnVy a really terrifying team.
I love the fact everyone gave ominous, we went through all those players, giving nice little thoughts about it, and there was ominous music playing in the background the whole time for some reason when the evil Kiki was on the screen as well, totally.
Well, he's a very ominous person, you know, from EnVyUs. Just switching roster, maybe he might be the reasoning why these rosters have been switched. It hasn't been really working out for them right now, but going into this LAN, trying to transition with these newer rookies, with Oceans and with the other rookie Skeeledon, they're trying to figure out their identity right now.
And you touched on that as well, Yannick, the fact that the mid-jungle synergy very important for him. A revolving door was EnVy for a while, but now starting to settle down a little bit with Skeeledon, but they've still got things to work on there, you feel?
Yeah, I would say Skeeledon's definitely a very talented player, and he definitely shows it in ranked. I think he's like top 3 on the leaderboards pretty consistently. As long as he can translate that to competitive play, and work on the synergy with him and Kiki, they could be a really strong team.
Well, we talked about the mid and junglers, but we should definitely mention the supports because both those two are going to make a big impact in this game as well. They're part of the trio we see in the mid lane, totally. Thoughts on the two supports here?
PBM and Shadowq right now, actually PBM learned from Shadowq when he first started playing in competitive. It only took PBM about 6 months in total until he joined Eager and trying to make an impact for himself.
I believe there's a season stats there on the screen between those two players. And there's PolarBearMike. Yannick, thoughts on PolarBear? As a support player as well, I mean, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think he's super, super intelligent. The way he thinks about the game is really smart. I would say that he is one of the primary like strat makers for his team, and I really think that he's definitely one of the more intelligent support players out there. And the fact that he learned from Shadowq as well, like he actually does pick up some of the speech tendencies from Shadow as well.
Really?
Yeah.
They sound so similar. If you put them in the same channel in, like, let's say Ventrilo or whatever, you're going to not distinguish either of them.
So we've got two cerebral supports playing against each other here as well. So on paper, who would you side with here? Obviously, you played with Shadowq before, so you probably got a little bit of advantage there.
I would definitely lean more towards Shadowq because of the veteran experience that he has. He's been definitely around the block, and you can never ignore the jukes coming out of Shadowq.
Well, I want to bring up Shadowq a little bit more here as well, because obviously, Yannick, he played in the launch tournament. You know, that was the last time he's really been to LAN for a long time. When you come back to a new LAN after a break, I mean, you've done it before in the past yourself. Is it a big difference? Is it easy just to go straight back into the sway of things, or do you have to start over again?
I'd say it's pretty easy. Interestingly, actually, Shadowq is the shot caller for his team, as well as Mike being the shot caller for EnVy as well, actually. So when I tried out for Denial, actually, when I was a jungler, before going to Randozzo's, Shadowq pretty much just calls everything for Denial. So they really live and die by the Shadowq calls, I would say.
And you could definitely see it in his style. He always leads the team in the level 1 gatherings, the skirmishes. They try to find an early pick in the online phases. When every time he plays Bacchus, it seems that they look for that level 1 pick.
So totally coming back to you again now. Obviously, when we head towards picks and bans now between these two teams, we just saw EnVy play there, you know, up against Saw. And if you Denial now, you've seen how EnVy played. What do you want to do in your picks and bans this time around, just to continue what Saw did?
You just try to control the tempo coming out of the jungle. We saw how dominant Anister was on the Thor. We didn't see much coming out of Skeeledon, unfortunately, so I think that as long as Denial can find that early game lead, whether they can control the mid-harpies and the fire giant elementals, they should be in a good pace to really start getting the later objectives.
Yeah, you saw totally mentioned Skeeledon there. Should the focus be onto Skeeledon to keep shutting him down and keeping him busy?
I'm not too sure. I honestly think that Denial does have an advantage, though, going into this set because they got to see EnVy's picks and them play. And EnVy hasn't seen Denial play for like 3 or 4 weeks. So I would say that putting the focus onto Skeely as well as Kiki would be probably their main focus for these picks and bans.
Doesn't surprise me. What do you think about EnVy need to do against Denial here? Obviously, it's been a long break since we've seen the boys at Denial as well, so they may have some strategies in the bag we've not seen just yet.
I mean,
will they pull them out here?
Maybe they could do some strategy leaning towards CycloneSpin. We've seen that work in the past, but it hasn't really been into effect for them recently. So go for an aggressive early game strategy where CycloneSpin has the advantage in the solo lane, and then maybe have Skeeledon try to camp that lane a little bit more, and then start invading from there. Go for the blues, go for the speed buffs.
Yeah, so really interesting composition between these two teams. Obviously, the teams are getting ready for picks and bans there. And there is a face you've not seen for a very long time, if not before, I should say. This is Oceans on your screen. We saw him in that first set. He had an okay performance there, Tolly.
Yeah, he definitely, I would say, for his first LAN ever, it wasn't as dominant as his online phase, I would say, but then again, we saw the bans coming out of Soar. It was both EnVyUs and Soar kind of banning away his god pull a little bit. Soul was not played for him.
And Ionic, you played against Oceans before. You've probably seen him around the scene for a bit. What do you feel about Oceans overall?
Definitely very talented. As we've said previously, ADC is one of the deepest roles in North America for sure. So I'd say he's definitely right up there, and he held his own against Met last game as well. So I'd say that's super impressive for him.
Is this part of EnVy's like new strategy? They used to all focus on CycloneSpin and getting him big and fed, and it seems to be that maybe Oceans is a superstar of this team this time around.
Oceans really can be the guy to really step it up and be the one to carry your team to victory, sort of like Bear did in the last NA stage. So I would say maybe not quite there yet, but maybe look for him to have a breakout game or two at this LAN.
I was going to say, Tolly, a lot of pressure on Ocean's shoulders if he is going to be that superstar for this team. Obviously, coming in your rookie LAN and you expect it to be the best thing for this team.
Well, one of these side lanes has to be carrying right now. We saw CycloneSpin of past, but now it could be Ocean's era. We saw him in the online phases, how successful he was. Every time he rotated to a team fight before his opposition, he was always making the plays one step over the enemy hunter.
But this comes back again for me, Ionic, to the fact that EnVy's strategy here seems to be like, if Kiki's going mid lane and playing supportive gods, they only really have one carry on the team then, which is Ocean, so it's even more pressure on this kid.
Yeah, you can see that Skeeledon is actually usually the one to initiate either with the Thor ult or the Ratatoskr ult, so it's usually Skeeledon going in, Kiki and Mike following up with their follow-up, whatever, and then Oceans and Cyclone pretty much trying to do all the damage, so you're really looking towards either Oceans or Cyclone having to really pop off for them to find a victory.
And Denial, well, they're going to be looking for their first points this time round as well. They're going to get themselves in a pretty good position here, obviously. Group of death, if you can get a couple of early points against EnVy as well, it definitely sets you up for a comfortable situation here, Tolly.
Usually you want to get at least 2 out of the 4 games to set yourself up in a decent position in the second day right now. EnVyUs unfortunately didn't get any points quite yet. Soar looking very strong, finding their first wins. And if they really want to get ahead in the first day, they need to find at least 1 win against Denial. It's not the end of the world if they only find 1 win, ending the day at 1 point. They could still find about 12 more points in the next 2 days.
Yeah, the last time these two faced off against each other as well, Denial and EnVy did split, so it wouldn't be a surprise to see it that way. Who would that favor if that happened, though?
I would say that at this point in time, it would favor Denial heading into the later portion of the day. EnVyUs finishing with 1 point would be a good way to bounce back from such a bad loss in their last set. So that would be them kind of licking their wounds.
What about you, Ian? Do you reckon it's a good idea if they split here?
I'm
not from a Soul point of view, obviously. I mean, just as a whole.
Yeah, I would say if Denial gets the first game, I'd say they'd find the second game as well off that momentum, and EnVy as well, having lost 3 straight games if they lose the first game. But I would say it definitely does favor EnVy if they find the split.
It's going to be very interesting to see how these two teams play out. They still get themselves ready for picks and bans at the moment. Apologies for the delays. But obviously, there's been a lot of things to talk about with this group coming into it. Obviously, everyone expects Soar to do very well. We still have Enemy yet to play as well. And Enemy, you know, they've been quite quiet just lately since, you know, having Panda Cat join back. They didn't get off to a great start in the online portion, Tolly.
And in the interviews, we saw we heard how confident they were in their performance. Not necessarily in the online phase because of Panda Cat being MIA, but in the Epsilon LAN Invitational beforehand, just how dominant they were. They took it to Game 5 against Epsilon back then. And on top of this, like, they're always confident in their leadership behind Payne Devion and how well he's been able to just rally the troops in LANs.
Now, we mentioned Enemy, obviously, Denial and EnVy coming up as well. Ionic, your coaches saw who's the biggest opposition for you? I know I don't really like asking that, but who is the biggest opposition you feel is in this group for you?
Well, I would say currently Denial, but you kind of have no idea what's going on with Enemy. Like, they could either show up, be the team that took Epsilon to 5 games, or they could be the team that we just destroyed in 40 minutes in our online stages. So you really never know what's going to go on with Enemy. I would say their win condition is probably Panda Cat. If Panda Cat can really carry his weight like he did back in the spring, then I'd say Enemy's looking good.
Interesting. So you've got it down as like basically EnVy's kind of Oceans as the carry, and then you've got Enemy, which is Panda Cat, and then Denial. Is it going to be Vetium, Toli?
I think all these hunters, honestly, out of this group is just so powerful and so scary to really deal with. You don't want to ever take a boxing match against any of these hunters. You're definitely going to get punished. Any little mistake that you do, you're going to start losing your boars and then even your red buffs from there.
Yannick, you've played against all these hunters before for sure in the support role. Who's the hardest? Who's the most difficult hunter?
Out of this group,
Just this group, yeah.
I'd probably say Met. He's on my team, obviously, so I kind of have to say
cheap.
him.
Okay,
It's
without being biased, okay? Even if it's true, without being biased. No Met in this game.
I'll go with Oceans. Oceans definitely is one of the best players who knows how to push his lead really well. Some of these players, when they get a lead, they don't really push it and try and punish you and force you under your tower as much. So I would say Oceans is probably the best at taking advantage of the lead.
And you mentioned that. We see Vetium on the screen there. A lot of players this weekend, Tolly, during the interviews were saying that he's very safe in the lane. He doesn't die very often, but he won't push or extend the lead either for the most part. He'll just sit there and farm and wait for the mid-lane game and the team fights.
Sometimes you just want to wait for that right opportunity to go for the objectives. You know, like if you can get some tower poke, like sure, I can maybe get 200 to 300 tower poke in this one scenario when I force the enemy back, but that's going to overextend me, and now the jungler is going to start rotating on me, and then I have to worry about the global presence. And then off of that one def that you just gave up to them, then the enemy's just going to start getting the gold furies.
But on top of that, if you've got a hunter like Vetium who's just going to farm up Yannick in that lane and not want to take trades or even rotate until a team fight happens, does that change the map style and the presence of your team as a whole?
It definitely does change it as a whole. If dual lane's forced under tower, they're obviously going to be rotating second either way if you're behind. But if you're forced under tower and taking poke, like you would be from a hunter who really punishes you from behind, then then I would say it definitely does change the map dynamic. And I'd say you definitely want to have the hunter that is punishing you when you're...
Plays a little bit more aggressive, basically, yeah. It keeps you going on the forefront for the most part here. So, two decent teams here. Obviously, they went 1-1. They still get themselves sorted in picks and bans for some reason. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I'm pretty sure it's probably something like...
Just blame Adonis, honestly.
Blame Adonis.
Just blame Adonis.
Okay, well, it seems like we are having a couple of technical issues. We'll be back after this short break. Apologies for the delay. And we're back with Denial versus EnVy. Apologies for the delays, but we're into picks and bans now. Denial will get the first option here, Tolly. Do we expect any focus bans coming out from them?
I think that they might try to focus out PBM here, like you mentioned before. Maybe a Athena ban would be a good idea for them, trying to take the comfortability away from the shot caller out of EnVyUs, and that would disrupt EnVyUs' flow.
Do you think, Yannick, though, they really have to ban away the Athena when they do have Shadowq, who'll be quite happy to play that himself?
I'm not sure if they're okay with first picking Athena, but it looks like they banned out the Raw instead. They might first pick the Athena. It kind of depends. We didn't see Mike play it at all last set, obviously, because we just banned it away. So we don't even know if he's going to pick it or if we just wasted a ban. We don't really know.
Now, I don't want to go into too much about the Saw composition of your strategies coming into this, but obviously we saw you guys play the Raw earlier on as well. And what's the easiest way to play around this Raw? Is it pretty much ban it out to make sure teams don't get it? Is it that strong?
Ban it out. Raw is definitely just super obnoxious from ahead. If you're winning a poke trade, you've pretty much won the fight instantly unless the other team has another super sustained god, and there's not really a god that's just as good at sustaining as Raw. So banning it out, good option.
We didn't see the Guan Yu at all that last set. I was thinking that maybe EnVyUs was going to put that one out there just to try to match the sustain. Why do you think that teams aren't opting for the Guan Yu to match the Raw sustain?
I'm not too sure. Maybe it just doesn't really fit into their team comps. Maybe they don't want to have to put a magical god somewhere else on the map, like the Soul 80 carry or maybe Kuang jungle or something like that. So, or it could just be personal preference for both the support players.
Well, we do see the Athena was picked up by Denial as a first pick here. Can flex totally into multiple roles. We've seen that before. However, EnVyUs going to draft the Erlang, Shen, and the Kuang.
We saw how Kuang is normally banned out in a lot of these sets. Actually, in the last group, it wasn't banned against anybody except for Energy, surprisingly enough. So we'll see what Skeeledon is going to be able to do in this game. And now it's going to be paired up with the Erlang Shen. So we'll see if it's going to be another aggressive strategy coming out of CycloneSpin getting camped with Skeeledon.
And Denial going to draft the Nemesis very early on here. Still value in the Nemesis. Do you still think it's viable, Yannick?
I do. I think Nemesis is a little undervalued by some junglers, so seeing Nemesis picked up here isn't really a big surprise to me. I think it's interesting that Denial decided to take away the Athena and valued taking it away from Mike so much that they were willing to give up the Kuang and the Erlang Shen, which are both two very strong picks. And
those two picks as well, Tully, I mean, they're good on paper at the moment. If you put them in support and jungle, well, you need a mid laner that can help them clear a little bit in the early game here, especially if you've got an Kuang jungle. But Kiki doesn't, for the most part, go for those early clear gods. He goes for the supportive types.
He goes for a more defensive style, but you never know what Kiki has really been practicing outside of this land. He could have been practicing a lot of stuff, so could potentially see the Giannis, like Yannick was mentioning.
Cupid
but
Hunter.
It's probably going to be the Cupid yet again, which is not a bad idea because it's going to allow the Erlang Shen to keep getting sustained up after he goes in.
What's your thoughts on this so far, Yannick?
Envy's definitely very happy to pick up the Kuang because that means they are allowed to pick up the Cupid min without being pigeonholed into the Chronos ADC. As you saw last game, we banned away the Soul and the Freya.
So you had the
their
magical.
only option was to pick up the Chronos ADC. Now they have the Kuang jungle, they have the magic.
So they could put another Hunter in the Hunter role now as well if
Yeah.
they want to run this Cupid mid lane. Is a good option for them. They still get the magical. Well, Jingwei's going to be banned by Envy here. They definitely don't want Vetium to have it. We mentioned how much Vetium just likes to farm off and not really take trades. Well, Jingwei's great for that.
Absolutely, and I think that Oceans might be looking for an on-her pick if he's going to try to take advantage of Vetium's passive playstyle. I wouldn't be surprised, especially if it's going to be Erlang Shen support, but more than likely that's going to go to CycloneSpin yet again.
Well, Sobek will be banned out as well here. Obviously, a little bit of focus towards PolarBearMike again on those engaged gods. Athena, Sobek, very, very similar in that style. Do you expect to see him do another ban here, Yannick, towards PolarBearMike?
If they are looking to ban away another god, I think they should look to take away either the Ymir or the Bacchus, both two very comfortable gods for Mike. He's definitely improved his Ymir play a lot over this last split. So I would say they should look to take away one of those two.
Yeah, Ymir, interesting one there, Tolly. We don't see him too much over in North America as a whole, but PolarBearMike is the one willing to run it.
He wanted to try to find a strategy that would wall off the Ra in that first game. Surprisingly enough, didn't see the Odin in that game, and you guys took full advantage of that immobile Ymir. So I would be surprised if we see a Ymir pick. I'm more electing to see Denial ban out the Bacchus. It's just such great setup for all the gods. It does so much damage to find a target and get them into Kuang execute threshold.
It's possible as well there. Obviously with Nemesis banned as well, I mean, sorry, with Nemesis picked, it does shut down a lot of the Guardians here, and there's the Bacchus ban, as Tolly suggested here. But Anher was banned away, so we might see Oceans go to that now, Tolly.
I'm surprised that EnVyUs elected to ban out the Anher because they have the next pick, right? They could have picked up the Anher here at this point and then look for the aggressive dual lane strategy.
Yeah, do you think Envy are going to pick up a natural Hunter here and then save their solo laner as a flex option with the Erlang Shen?
I think I'm expecting Envy to last pick their either Hunter or mid, so they can keep Denial guessing and then pick up their Guardian here. So I'm not really sure.
Okay,
It might be the Ymir, but I think that he is scared of, after that poor showing, he might be scared of getting picked a lot again
and against
in this game.
Athena and Nemesis and a Raijin, it's not the best thing to want to play as a Ymir as well, Tolly.
It's going to be the Chronos actually for EnVyUs, so we still don't know necessarily where that's going to go, but more than likely that is going to be Chronos on to Oceans is going to play the Chronos, so that could leave maybe a Xing Chen opening for EnVyUs coming out of the Guardian position.
Yeah, the Erlang Shen could still be either Guardian or solo lane as well, so that's another flex pick that Envy has.
Yeah, we have seen Cyclone run that a couple of times. Over to the solo lane here for Benji. Denial. Look at the Amaterasu here. And obviously into a matchup you don't know, Tolly, at least it's solid.
It is pretty good because transitioning into the late game, you have so much mobility, so much damage. You go into the backline very easily and you create such a havoc with your ultimate doing so much damage. You're going to force out maybe multiple sanctuaries, but in the early game, you're going to struggle, especially against Erlang Shen. And knowing CycloneSpin, he wants to get that early game advantage.
You talk about the ultimate making a difference. Well, that global from Neith now probably going over to Vetium here. Yannick, how do you like the draft for Denial now?
I really, really like this draft for Denial. The only weak lane that they have right now is the Amaterasu versus Erlang Shen, which they should be losing like a couple hundred gold at the start of the game. But they have a really, really good pick composition. Athena, Nemesis, Neith. Mike's really going to have to watch out for getting picked in this game.
And Envy as well here, Tolly. Obviously, they're waiting for the last pick, which they're hovering over Raven here, which would say it's going to be the Erlang Shen support this game. What's the biggest focus point with this team comp now?
Well, it's actually going to be Bellona at the last second making that switch. And I like this idea because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself in a bad spot in the support role either. So now you're going to have an aggressive soul laner on the Bellona. You're going to be able to limit the attacks coming out of the Amaterasu and the Neith in the late game with that Scourge, as well as the Nemesis. And Erlang Shen paired up with the Chronos is going to be so aggressive in the duel lane.
Denial, who's got this? Sorry, Yannick, who's got this game for you this time? I'm going Denial quite clearly.
I'm going to go with Denial as well.
I have to give it to Denial.
Three of us all going for Denial here after Dennis bring us game one.
Well, EnVy's going to opt back for the Cupid mid. Maybe they thought that some of the things that they tried last time they can fix against Denial. I love the pairing of the Chronos and the Cupid, though.
Yeah, I mean, it just brings you such dynamic damage. I think that's what's most important. A lot of teams, you know, when they do pick up the Magical Hunters, they'll be kind of lacking on that physical damage, relying very heavily on a solo laner and a jungler. And, you know, if you go kind of like not the strongest single target damage on that warrior, it becomes kind of hard. But, you know, with this style of composition, you have that double damage potential. Kuang coming out of the jungle as well, and so it doesn't matter which way you itemize in that early game, whether it's to, you know, focus on that physical or magical defense, you're going to be very susceptible to the other side.
All the magnifying glasses, I think, are on this Kuang pick coming out of Skeeledon. We saw him be very shaky. I think that's the polite way to say it in the first set. And here coming in, Kuang, I mentioned it when Anister picked it. This is, I mean, you can't be okay on Kuang. You have to succeed.
And we saw what Anister was able to do with it, and that's the thing. Kuang is a god that you get punished for a single misplay. However, there's so many options in your kit to make sure you confirm kills, get out, escape. It's just because you are a mage, because you have very low base health and not a lot of protections, it's troublesome.
Old school Denial group up. Kiki's in trouble and Kiki's toasted.
Oh, he got his heart bomb level 1 there. I don't know if he had leveled that up earlier, just panicked and hit the wrong button. But the body blocks were there as well, and real fast first blood coming out of Denial. Kiki having no idea what was going on.
The Wolf Pack grouping up just like their name would suggest, and getting the kill. Honestly,
that's a Denial strat.
It's funny because Denial has seen probably 3 completely different teams now, but regardless if it's Pain to Beyond in the Hunter role or if it's the Denial that we know right now, they always want to fight you early.
They do. and this actually isn't the worst position for Kiki to be in. He got first blooded, but it wasn't right before camp, so he's going to be able to be on time to these. You could see it was split 5 ways, so it's not like one person got a huge amount of gold and experience. The biggest gain there was the kill going over to the Neith, and she has about 200 gold off of that, 200 to 300 extra gold off of that, but honestly, he's not really going to be able to utilize it, and so it's annoying at this point, but it really is not going to affect the state of the game until the Neith makes her first back, or if she's able to make that first back and get a power spike like Boots.
And even with that in mind, even with that thought in mind of getting that power spike of Boots, Neith isn't the god that you're scared of getting. Kuang, oh no. A couple of other junglers and on her here or there, watch out. But Neith, I'm not really that scared.
And good job by Denial there. You could see Hurriwind just making sure to zone out Skeeledon. EnVy are going to have to concede those right side Harpies, head over and get those fire elementals or gremlins, depending on whether you're EU or NA.
Skeeledon has a Raijin on him, so he's going to keep his distance and falls off, and there's a little aggression out of Homiefe, and we heard a lot of talk about Homiefe, both you know, in the interviews and even just the scuttlebutt around. Homiefe is the impact player playing on a setup god like Nemesis. Do you think that hurts a team, or is it all part of the grand scheme?
No, I don't think so, and you heard it from Anister here. Left side Harpies, I think they got split there, but a lot of damage from Denial. And I don't think it's that big of a deal because, you know, if you are truly a top-tier jungler, you can play any style your team needs to. Sure, this isn't the game where he's going to be making the highlight Kuang plays, but this is the game where he makes really good decisions in team fight, you know, assuming he does. Makes, you know, and having that variability is very important in your jungle role.
And I actually, you know, I kind of set you up for the softball there because I like when the hard carries play the Nemesis, because if you play Nemesis with the guise of being this, like, if you play Nemesis like you play some of the super hard carries, you set up so many good options for your team.
I'm really just wondering what style he's going to play, because we saw Adapting go for that full damage Nemesis, builds crit, you know, in the last couple items, just gets to the back line, and his focus is play very much like a Kali, where you just kind of loop around. You're not the big man in the team fight setting up, you are a hard carry, and so Homiefe does have that option to play it like that.
And I think that's, as the game comes to him, we usually see the opposite, right? Thor builds aggressive, unless he falls behind, and then he's a big old tank. We see that with a number of junglers. The Nemesis is kind of the opposite. You're tank by default, but if you get off to a tear, sure, build crit.
Yeah, and it's the flow of the game and also kind of what your role is. If you feel like your team composition is going to be strong enough in that 4v4 to allow you to play that assassin style, if you have setup elsewhere, and honestly, Denial do have setup elsewhere. They have the Amaterasu movement speed aura that's going to be able to chase people down. They have Shadowq on that Athena, probably the the most iconic setup god in the game. Has her entire kit is literally setup. I dash, I taunt, I 3. Okay, my team now kills you.
And anytime I see Neith is a hunter just like the rest of them, and at the end of the day, she's going to basic attack you down with a full build. Hold that idea, though. Trouble for PolarBearMike on the right side. Cupid helps out with an ultimate, and here comes Skeeledon from the other side, but Hurriwind, just enough damage to send people away, but not going to send CycloneSpin. There's the bludgeon, and he comes right on down.
Benji has looped around back behind them, but he's not going to be able to make any play happen, and now off of that Envy, looking to invade that speed buff. Really good timing for them. That Denial kind of just played that a little bit awkward. We saw Hurriwind hold his ult for a little bit, and then, there was obviously no clear call. We saw all 4 shots go on different people. Thought he was going to get caught in the mid, but he had the dash. I almost thought he had his dash down, and that's what they were going for him. But Denial actually able to also counter jungle the speed here, so that's really no loss to them.
That was kind of cute. Both junglers, they're going to see each other here in the solo lane and just go, oh. All right, you take mine, I take yours. Damage has a Skeeledon, but he takes a shot from the tower. Ooh, goes a little bit too deep, and Homiefe follows him while invisible and gets the kill.
And that just can't happen if you're Skeeledon. You walk into a tower. He was tanking a ton of minions as well. He's only level 6. He's not this god that's level 10, and Hurriwind is caught in the mid. Great taunt from Shadowq, and the damage from the heart bomb just shy of a kill.
That right there, that play right there, that is what Shadowq has made his career off of. We saw him earlier, and sure, he hasn't had much success as of late, but his consistent, just like strong play, I guess, he hasn't been able to place, but those taunts, the ability to save his teammates, that's what Shadowq has really made a name for himself.
There's really 2 styles of supports, and honestly, in Season 3, we saw the rise of the aggro supports, right? Trickstank had been doing it forever, and then we started seeing Aurora get involved, and you're getting all these players that, as supports, they really just go in, look for setup and damage.
Yeah.
Shadowq has always been that defensive guy.
Well, Homiefe looking for damage in the mid lane, pops the ultimate, he's got Raijin in tow, and Hurriwind seals the deal.
Just kind of caught out there. Yeah, I mean, ultimate was not used from PolarBearMike. I'm not sure if he popped it there. I didn't happen to notice, but it didn't go on cooldown. He didn't get the heal. And that's just them not respecting that combo. The Nemesis ult straight into Hurrwind's ult. There's no purification on the side of PolarBearMike here. His shell was also used in that earlier engagement, and that was just a free pick. You just got to be careful with your positioning in those spots.
And with those early picks, it comes into early objectives, and very early on, Denial's off to an early lead. If you've caught the motif, Denial in general have been an early team. I mean, they got a kill before the game literally started.
But the thing is, like, their comp isn't even really designed for hyper early game.
Not at all.
Outside of the ult combo from Homie and Hurriwind, right? They're not going to really want to box anyone outside of just trying to kill them. And then they have the Neith ultimate. That's going to be honestly useful at all stages of the game, mostly in the early and mid, where he's going to be able to send that ult, make an impact in team fights while locking Oceans down in the lane with him. But it's just pick after pick after pick, and it's just positioning coming out from Envy, not respecting that damage. And that's sometimes hard to figure out, because sometimes Mike might actually want to bait out that combo, pop his ult, and there's 2 ults for his, and that's going to be a win.
And PolarBearMike, the problem there is that there's a delay on the heal, so he might get tricked a little bit. Goes in, gets aggressive, and Vetium pulls the trigger nice and early. So PolarBearMike does bait out the Neith ultimate.
And, I mean, Neith is just going to keep, spamming those on cooldown there. Homiefe trying to stop these gremlins, but Cyclone has secured them.
And Kiki's going to get engaged on, dashed directly towards, but dashed away from Hurriwind's ultimate. And honestly, just much ado about nothing here on the right side of the map, and Envy going to try to turn that around, looking for the speed buff invade.
Skeely's level 8 and has no mana, so he needs to be really careful with this play right now. They still want to set up for this speed buff because there were so many ultimates forced out of Denial. They feel very confident, and the speed buff will be secured here, but they need to be careful. Skeeledon has not really had the best showing so far. He's kind of been in the right positions, but he's kind of just showing himself too early, I would want to say.
He flubbed. And that happens. But,
and here's the chase.
Yeah, weird as I don't know.
Nice stun, Oceans.
Exactly. Just as I expected. And, like I was saying, I mean, he flubbed, and that's going to happen to anybody. But when you pick out Kuang, that's an unflubbable god. You can't do that on this character. And honestly, I mean, 7 minutes in, this Kuang is going to struggle for the rest of the game.
And Oceans and PolarBearMike, it doesn't seem like they want to give up this blue right now, but there are 4 members. CycloneSpin has rotated back in, and Oceans finds a stun on a Benji who's real deep.
And he's surrounded, and he still gets out. Quick dash coming out of the solo lane.
Just great plays coming out of Shadowq, protecting his team, but now Vetium has been left alone. Skeeledon chasing him down. Purification are up for the Neith, but I don't think he's even going to bother using it. He's dead anyway. He knows it. Just good job there, making sure, don't waste my relics. You know, a lot of players do panic in those situations, thinking they can get out. But Vetium knows he's dead there, and now he will have that protection next time he gets ganked or is in a fight.
And Skeeledon doesn't use the ultimate as well.
Good call. I mean, both of them really just, well, everyone, they both are like, okay, this is how this is going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going any other way. Just save our stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Good discipline coming out from both players there. 3-1 still. Denial up on top despite the play from Envy getting themselves on the board here. 1,300 gold in the lead for Denial, which is worth talking about because it's just so early.
It's 8 minutes in, and that was really just the gold fury. It's been pick after pick after pick. And a lot of the jungle invades that Envy are getting immediately answered back. Not this time, but we saw the blue buff invade come out. We saw the speed buff earlier when Skeeledon did steal away Homiefes. And so Envy are, you know, winning in the jungle, but it's not cleanly because they're getting answered back. And so because of that, this lead is just going to keep gaining unless they can stop it.
And that's something that Envy have to look at because their composition isn't really built for that, Kevin. Their composition is built to sort of like wade. If they're down 1,500 for the next 5 or 10 minutes, that's okay. But if Denial are able to creep on them, we'll see the same thing that we saw in game number 1 against Soar.
They actually have a lot of disruption in late game team fights. They have the hard magical carries coming out of the Kuang, coming out of the Chronos, and then a good amount of CC from PolarBearMike and Kiki. Well, it's not the hard stuns. Just having that cripple in team fights is huge, especially against Homiefe and Hurriwind, who really rely on their dashes. Homiefe to get in, Hurriwind to get out, and so baiting out those purifications with Erlang Shen in the late game is going to be really powerful.
And if Envy can get the jump, I mean, this is all assuming Denial get their perfect setup. If Envy actually do get the jump, I mean, Shadowq is pretty much rendered useless. Athena is so dependent on that dash. And Vetium, I mean, what's a Neith without a backflip? Well, Chronos gets the rewind, but Homiefe is going to wait right there. Probably not enough damage to clean him up, though.
Again, Ocean's just playing everything so well there. He gets caught out, immediately ults. He doesn't waste any time. He's not trying to see if he can escape before the damage comes through. He gets reset right into Homiefe, beads before the animation from the slide. He already knew exactly what Homiefe was going to do, hits him with the stun as well, and managed to stay alive. But again, you know, that beads versus the ultimate timer. I'll spend that ultimate from Nemesis any day of the week, especially considering Jotun's was already completed, and so it's even lower cooldown.
There's the dash coming out of Denial right on top of PolarBearMike. Sorry, bud. He's gonna get out. No way.
Hit, and there's the heal just short. It would have been 1 more second. And PolarBearMike turtles into the wall. Very unfortunate for him. Caught in place. Couldn't get his ult off at the beginning either. By the time he popped it, it was just too little too late. He was on like, 50 health.
But a great play coming out of Hurriwind. Honestly, if he wasn't there in that exact spot, that's a dropped kill.
I will say Hurrwind's been a little bit slow with the ultimates. I think he's not sure in a lot of situations if the kill is going to be confirmed. And so we see him holding it for the end. Obviously, it worked out there. But there's been other spots that I think Hurriwind probably could have gotten kills secured earlier. You know, we know Soar style, which is very like, this is the person, use your abilities, kill them right this second. I mean, that's the call from Soar in a lot of spots.
Well, at the same time, we also saw a lot of Raijins rendered useless. Thinking specifically to Xenotronics, where the fight would start, he'd go up in the Raijin, and everybody just runs away. Yeah, so like with that in mind, I think Hurriwind looking more towards, he likes to talk about Yamen a lot. I think look more towards the European style, where the Europeans use Raijin to close a fight rather than to start a fight.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say they do. I like in this late game, I definitely agree. But I feel like a lot of times early game, you kind of just want to get the pick and get out. I mean, Denial has 4 picks, right? It hasn't really been any big team fights. And that's, I almost feel like they're going to have 6 or 7 at this point if they just invested everything, especially considering that that's their deal, right? They have this Nemesis, who is just an ult bot, basically, at least right now. And you can see in the face of player comparison, up against Skeeledon here, he really wants to get rolling early and make sure that this Kuang is not going to get ahead of him, because we know what Kuang can bring, in those late game scenarios.
Hurrwind's in a little bit of trouble. Should be fine. The heart bomb did explode.
Actually, I'm surprised that Sanctuary stops it. I thought it would have been. I thought it would have ended right there.
You know, I think this is a deceiving player comparison, honestly. Those stats looked very similar when you talk about the team success, right? Denial, middle of the pack, and Envy struggling to reach middle of the pack. But if you're going to compare Skeeledon and Homiefe, I think you're looking at two very different players.
You're definitely looking at the polar opposite end of junglers in North America. Homiefe has cemented his place as a top-tier jungler. He's someone who actually I think could take on the world, could be one of the best, and probably just needs a little bit more time. I'm excited if this roster does make it to Worlds. I'm really excited to see Homiefe play because I think he had a great showing at Epsilon, or excuse me, DreamHack Masters.
Yeah.
Really showcased how high, what his skill cap is. He really put the team on his back in a lot of scenarios and kind of pushed them into those finals.
And it's interesting. I like the way how he lifts Hurriwind up. I think Hurriwind is a fine player. I don't think that Hurriwind is a bad player. Cyclone likely to get out, silenced a little bit, but should be fine. But Hurriwind or Shadowq is deep.
And no, actually just taunting and using that wrath to stun Skeeledon under tower there, trying to get the setup kill. The tower once again doing a lot of damage to this Kuang. He doesn't have a lot of base health right now. He does have the helm, so he reduces it a little. But if you can get that poke damage onto Kuang and have your team rotate in, or even just make it harder for him, because Kuang, wants to be full health when he gets in the back line. The idea is he takes a lot of damage, but he has that execute where he gets a massive heal and can reset his positioning in a team fight.
Which is what he's going to have to focus on. Homiefe narrowly avoiding the Erlang Shen, and going to ult PolarBearMike in return. And Hurriwind immediately goes in the ult this time. Starts things off with a bang, but no finish.
Again there, you saw the engage, the heart bomb off the mark there, really quick reaction from Homiefe to juke it out. The pin doesn't connect either. And then his team's retreating, and the Skeeledon's like, let me go to the edge of the tower. He does manage to get the Neith ult, but that could have been really dangerous if Hurriwind was a little bit faster on the draw and taunted him out just as he went in that invisibility. I mean, I don't think Skeely survives.
Denial have the lead here, but Envy going to make the power play and push towards the Gold Fury.
Wrath is down for Shadowq for another 55 seconds, so this is going to be going either way.
Nice catch right there. Kiki's going to interrupt the dash away himself, and Shadowq in trouble. He'll ult to the backside, and Benji makes the teleport on the top and takes out Kiki. Still looking for more. He's got his sights on PolarBearMike, but he swaps to Oceans.
Perfect rotation from Benji, finds one, allows for Homiefe to pick up Oceans, and there's the root as well. It's 3 kills for Denial off of Benji's play. CycloneSpin nowhere to be seen in that fight. That has been one of the biggest weaknesses, I think, of Envy overall. A lot of times, fights do not go their way, and the one person missing in them is CycloneSpin. He's a great individual player, but sometimes makes late rotations, which is honestly completely opposite of Cyclone last year, who was out-rotating everyone on Assassins without even having teleport.
And do you think that comes from the fact that he's on a warrior? When you're on Assassin, your goal is to kill people, right?
True.
So you want to make those earlier rotations. Do you think that Cyclone kind of is mentally stunting himself playing these warriors?
I mean, he's in a different environment, right? CycloneSpin played on the Chunks in Season 1, and it was kind of a team that knew they were going to lose. Then he comes to Envy, and it's just such a dominant roster, and I would say that was really his first birth into the competitive scene. Kiki in a little bit of trouble here. Skeeledon rotated around, and look at that, no mana for Hurriwind. He's not going to be able to Thunder Crash away.
But Kiki's able to find the shot, and that right there, that's your jungle mid synergy. Kiki walks into a terrible spot, gets himself with a target on his back, and Skeeledon just kind of saves
It's the
him.
Raffer strategy. Just bait yourself into death. And even if you die, it's okay because your team cleans up. Really fast rotations, and that's the thing. Kiki's not trying to be the carry player. He is okay with absorbing multiple ultimates if his team can clean up.
Exactly, and that's why you saw the relic choices out of him, both defensive. I mean, sure, he's playing Cupid, but earlier when he was playing Chang'e, he went that shell, right? He wants to play
really needed that, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to play this this sort of solo in the mid lane, if you will.
And Skeeledon continuing to put the pressure onto Homiefe, but the issue is he's still 500 gold behind, even after stealing away the speed buff at least 3 times this game. Denial doing a much better job of getting those picks and farming the map.
But this is the second time Envy make the power play. They take the initiative despite being the team down 4,000 gold. EnVy go ahead and just try to surprise siege the mid tower. Don't get it completely, but they take in about 90% of its HP.
That's just the mark of a good team, recognizing, you know, even if you're behind 4,000 gold, if Denial aren't in position to defend a tower and you can group up and get damage, you know, they didn't kill the tower, but now it's going to be that much easier anytime it's left alone. One rotation from Hurriwind. All that has to happen is Kiki hits that tower a couple times. Ocean's going really aggressive.
And this is a Chronos that's 1,000 gold down. He misses, and Vetium gets the shot. Oh, you can't have the yups here, young gun. First death on land.
And the lifesteal there, going Devourer's Gauntlets on this Neith, an item we haven't really seen get picked up too often there. I mean, it paid off so much for Vetium there. He was able to lifesteal up off a lot of what Oceans was doing. And the second that time rift missed, I mean, there's nothing, like Oceans is doing not barely any damage because Vetium's able to lifesteal a majority of that back up.
Yeah, and you know, I said first death on land. The first solo, like the hunter. It's the first time he gets soloed as a hunter. Those are the deaths that you take to your heart.
Brutal.
You know, you got soloed, and like I said, Oceans, I mean, that was a dead Neith if Oceans hits everything, right?
I mean, even if he hits it, though, it's close. But the main issue is he wasn't able to get the rewind off. I don't think he respected the damage that Vetium's autos were doing. I think he thought it was going to be a little bit lower than intentional there.
I mean, there's a 1,300 gold differential between the two of them, right? At the time when he took the fight, it was 1,000 gold. Hey, sure, you're a Chronos, and you're a very good Chronos as far as your player skill is concerned, but I think Oceans did what a lot of players do. They underestimated just Neith damage.
It's also, I mean, you know, Neith has been out of the meta surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
I think Neith is a very powerful character here. But the main issue is that because EnVy's so far behind and right now they haven't been making anything work, I think that's Oceans just saying, okay, I know the positioning of Homiefe right now. I know I can take this 1v1, and it's a matter of if I can outplay him or not. He's just trying to get, because if Oceans gets a lead there and can shut down Vetium and then, you know, start out-rotating him, you have a Chronos that's ahead. That's huge, and I think that was just a risk he decided to take there. It just didn't pay off for him.
Absolutely, and you know, if I'm Coach Kebab, right? Kebab coaches EnVy. If I'm Coach Kebab, I'm not getting on my rookie for that move. I would much rather my rookie get in trouble by trying to make the aggressive play than sit on his tower for 20 minutes.
It's calculated risks. I mean, we see it a lot with Fire Giants where teams will be, you know, 7,000, 8,000 gold behind. They catch the enemy team backing, and sometimes they'll just bum rush Fire because they feel like if they try and take a straight up fight, if they try and win playing the other team's games, that it's just going to snowball out of control. And so sometimes you do have to take those risks. Sometimes you do have to force a 1v1, even if you're not in the best spot trying to outplay, to find some edge on the map.
Absolutely, and like I stressed, 1,000 gold down. That's still a winnable fight for Oceans if he plays it correctly, but unfortunately for him and his team, they do not play it correctly. 20 minutes so far into this one, 10 kills in total, and 8 of them have the Denial logo on top. And it's 49,000 to 43 as far as the gold is concerned as well. So Denial have a lead, Kevin, but they don't seem to be doing much with it.
They quieted down in the early game. We saw Shadowq rotate. We saw Denial try and force a lot of kills with the Hurriwind and Homiefe ult combos. But after about minute 12 or 13, they stopped being able to one-shot people. EnVy's positioning, I mean, great adjustments from EnVy. They stopped getting picked off in those awkward spots. PolarBearMike making sure he now knows the damage potential coming out of those two, and so he just makes sure he's not in a bad spot. And so it's really about EnVy haven't really opened themselves up to get picked more than anything else.
Well, you're also seeing this sort of lull in Denial's build. Like, Nemesis is not an early game character, but she can sort of position herself and her teammates into making impacts early game, but then she dips. Chin size are online now. Nemesis is going to make an impact again.
Oh, Shadowq actually looking for 2. He does find the taunt. Purification forced on Kiki. PolarBearMike getting very low. Benji and Vetium combined for the kill as well.
Love the positioning at a Homiefe. Stays back the entire time, understanding that EnVy are going to funnel through this section right here. I'm pointing to the screen. Understanding that EnVy are going to funnel through that entrance to the jungle by the mid-harpies. So Homiefe stays back, throws the slice and dice, slows him down, allows one player to get the kill, and that'll open up the gold.
And EnVy do a good job of making sure to get that tower in mid lane, knowing that they're not going to be able to contest that without PolarBearMike. But PBM has 4 kills, and we're really seeing teams focus him down. I think they're trying to get in his head. He's just been getting picked off so much, and that's probably pretty demoralizing for him. He is the leader. He is the shot caller of the team. And because his positioning has really been hurting his squad, like, that's going to affect him.
Mid lane, Kiki drops his ultimate, and he's answered back with 2. But Hurriwind has to turn around to Skeeledon one more time,
Really
answers
early
back.
ult.
Homie dives the tower, gets the kill, and now Homie and Shadowq and Hurriwind will walk away.
And just a good job from Hurriwind there, doing as much damage to Skeeledon as possible to make him feel uncomfortable about sticking on him after that ult ended. And you saw Hurriwind, you know, not even a helmet, which you see from a, you know, obviously he's magical, but no protections coming out from him at all. And, you know, Skeeledon just doesn't have the damage online right now. Just completing that Obsidian Shard, but he's only level 16. You know, we've seen him all throughout the jungle farming these camps, but I don't think he's really been splitting waves efficiently. And you can see Kiki behind too. That's what's really surprising, that both of them are that far behind. Sometimes you'll see a jungler, you know, ahead because they've been stealing a lot of farm and kind of being greedy about it, and the mid gets hurt from that. Sometimes the opposite, but to see them both down, that's not good for them.
And the Cupid mid is something that it's got to work, right? Like, we see EnVy do that. We see EnVy, they pull out the Chunga mid, and it's got to work, and it just doesn't. And then they pull out the Cupid mid, and it's got to work, and it just doesn't. Is it are these poor choices? Is that why we never see them? Or is EnVy just not executing, Kevin?
I think it's a mix of both. I don't really think the Cupid, we haven't really been able to see what the Cupid can bring. It's just EnVy losing a lot of 2v2s and 3v3s in early and mid-game scenarios, and you know, you just get so far behind. So if this Cupid is designed to be this, you know, late-game monster where he's going to disrupt fights and heart bombs are going to hit you for a good chunk of your health, he just haven't had the option to showcase that.
Oh, I loved that play that Denial just did. I hope I get a chance to break it down. Skeeledon's going to blink away and get out of here. So Skeeledon tried to gank Vetium, right? So Skeeledon heads over to the jungle, over to the left side, and Homiefe's giving chase, and Skeeledon knows that Homiefe's behind him, but Homiefe heads towards mid looking for a different gank, but Vetium pushes up in his lane, pretending like Homiefe's still coming, and that sent the duo lane for EnVy back on the tower. That was a wonderful little deke coming out from Denial. That opens up the mid lane, gives him a tower.
And here's Kiki on the side. They're actually trying to focus out Hurriwind, but he's able to Thunder Crash away. Now the front line of Denial are destroying Kiki, who manages to get back to tower, but once again, Skeeledon looking for the dive, but he's feared away.
PolarBearMike comes down in the clutch, taking out Hurriwind, and we're still battling in the mid lane. Shadowq 25%, double stun from CycloneSpin, but there's no damage.
Skeely, he needs to come up big, but he gets taunted out. No purification, so low. Homie finds the kill. The positioning wasn't there. Skeeledon couldn't find that opportunity. PolarBearMike still pushing forward. Heart Bomb is dodged. Now the Neith arrow is being charged. Kiki probably in kill range, but Oceans dodges it, blocks it for him.
Nice block coming out of Oceans right there. Still giving chases Denial. They're not done just yet. CycloneSpin. He'll get out.
And PolarBearMike doing a really good job of protecting them with that turtle there, but you could see Denial kind of overextending, and Skeeledon once again comes into the middle of the fight, takes so much AoE damage, is forced out there. They were able to pick up Hurriwind, but then looping around, you know, he just loops around right in front of Denial, just gets immediately taunted out, had no purification. He really needed to play that better. He really needed to play around that Athena taunt and go on someone else or kind of just wait it out. Either of those options would have worked for him.
So before I assessed the Kuang pick, and I didn't really like it, and obviously it's not working out right now. But I getting into EnVy's head real quick, right? EnVy played against Soar last time around, and that is a tough opposition.
I think Soar are the best team in this group.
Sure, and I think a lot of people would agree that EnVy are probably more evenly matched against Denial. So giving Skeeledon, I guess you would say, a second chance to sort of come back on this carry god on the Kuang. I like it against Denial, but I mean, this is we've watched 3 games so far. All of them have been jungler v jungler. And unfortunately, Kevin, as much as I love Skeeledon, I don't know if he's able to take both Andinster and Homiefe.
You know, I've talked to EnVy a fair little bit, and, you know, they talked about how they've made adjustments into their play style to better fit, you know, the individual players on their team. And I feel like it just needs to be Kiki, Skeeledon, and PolarBearMike, right? They just need to survive or set up for their side lanes. Like Cyclone and Oceans, those are the 2 hard carries on this team, and it makes sense to me. You know, on the Hunbats works for Skeeledon, a Thor could work for Skeeledon, these gods that are going to be very dynamic, but as a hard carry, we haven't really seen Skeeledon be able to perform at a high enough level to compete against the likes of Homiefe and against the likes of Andinster.
PolarBearMike's getting taunted into some damage. Homiefe right on behind, and Denial in the same breath start the Gold Fury, but this is really about the fight.
they're baiting it right now, and you can see Homiefe just on zone duty. PolarBearMike wants to get in, but I mean, this is getting shredded pretty fast. PolarBearMike is going to come in here, but I mean, Wrath there for denial.
And there's Kiki stuck in the mid lane. Homiefe figured to chase him down while the rest of the team fights on the left-hand side. Vetium cleans up one. That's 2 for denial, and 2 separate engagements after the Gold Fury. You know, denial, they were baiting the Gold Fury. They didn't intend to take it, but I mean, Envy, if you're not going to show, like, sure, I'll just take this.
For me, it's just Envy has been playing incredibly sloppy. They haven't been playing as a team. Individual players are really kind of just doing their own thing, not following calls. We have half the team going in, half the team running away, and really just not giving respect to this Athena.
And she's going to ult right on back. On top of Vetium, there's a taunt. Ocean's immune some of it. And a good knockup from PBM. Vetium's going to flip right in the clutches of PolarBearMike, but Hurriwind shows up, and that'll chase him away.
And Shadowq going to have that taunt up relatively soon. Just looking for the lineup, you can see 3 seconds here, and Denial are going to siege this. They're going to play off of Shadowq. Only purification up right now is on Kiki, and he knows it. Both
dashes come out of Benji and Shadowq. That sends him to the back line and sends Oceans packing. CycloneSpin going to be the only one here trying to play defense. PolarBearMike inserts himself, and Vetium ejects him.
Again, just the team playing separately. Now Denial are pushing forward. Skeeledon's caught body blocked against a wall. CycloneSpin is up there by himself. I mean, either the call needs to be the team helps him out and he ults in place, or everyone backs off, or excuse me, it was PolarBearMike, I believe. I mean, it's just no one is on the same page on Envy. Everyone's playing their own game. It's so like it feels like a ranked game, and like no one's calling right now, or no one's following calls, whichever it is.
Exactly, and that's, you know, talking about look at
Skeeledon's face.
Yeah, Skeeledon's not happy right now, and I want to go back to something that you said about PolarBearMike. He's got to be frustrated, right? And PolarBearMike is a young leader. He's new to this role of player coach. That's very much what he does. And if you tilt that guy, if you get in the head of not PolarBearMike, but the leader, right? Who's calling the shots?
I think PolarBearMike's going to make a big impact in the Smite scene, but definitely, I mean, he came into a really rough situation because the core of Envy that made that team so good, Allied, Weekend, and Incon, all got kicked one by one. No shots to Cyclone and Kiki, but they are not leaders. They're kind of just there to do whatever job is needed of the team, and they're the ones who obviously agreed to kicking the other 3, and so you kick, your very mature members who were really strong leaders, had a strong core, regardless of any drama, they really kept the team together emotionally, and now they don't really have that strong core anymore. They have PolarBearMike, they have Oceans, who's super new to the scene. They have Skeeledon, who's been in and out. Has potential. We see the potential in Skeeledon, but he's not really someone who's going to be able to lead the team with PBM. He almost needs someone else to help him out.
I think if you look at what we've seen here in this game and the set beforehand, it really shows what's kind of wrong with Denial. We complimented Denial on doing the textbook stuff, right? They take a Gold Fury and then, or I'm talking about Envy. Denial take a Gold Fury and Envy immediately pick up the tower, right? We saw that in the set beforehand, how they were split pushing, right? Because they knew they couldn't take the fight. The reactive strategy out of Envy is fantastic. They understand the game, but they have no proactive initiative. They're not really going for it. They're just going, okay, well, they did that. We're down gold and we can react.
I'm just surprised because this is the same Envy we saw in the online stages, and we talked about it where just people are on different pages, and I really had expected them to fix it. It seemed like they had, talking to the players, but still the same issues where they've kind of fallen back.
Denial's pushing on the left-hand side for the Phoenix, and that wasn't too much of a struggle. They'll pick it up easy peasy. 2 Phoenixes remain. Scratch that! 2 Phoenixes are down. It's only the one on the right that's still kicking.
And Benji just, going to that right-hand side, distracting the team, and now actually taking a lot of abilities, could turn around and fight this.
He's going to get knocked up in Heart Pond, and that be that. Denial heading over to the right-hand side. Only Phoenix available.
Skeely needs a kill here. He needs to execute someone if Envy have a chance at winning.
Well, they're going to come in here. Let's ride along with Denial while they fight against Envy.
Forward. Nice. Ayo. They can't keep that after. Come on, Chronos. Root of Chronos. Chronos ages down. I'm chasing. Chronos half HP. I'm on Phoenix.
Yeah, don't stop that.
Back up. Yeah, Phoenix. Do we want to end? The sheer death? A little bit. Yeah, we have fireways everywhere, brother. Let's go.
Get as soon as mid enters, we can
definitely kill them. Double's done? I'm on Titan. Same, I'm on Titan. We're gonna world?
Oh.
Yeah, we're gonna world. Good game.
Good game, guys.
What did we do wrong there?
You know, when we talk about, when we exit those listen-ins, I like to talk about something specific that they said. Here I want to talk about how they sounded. Nobody was concerned.
Confident,
Nobody was worried.
Clean. No one's talking, just Vetium, just kind of calling out what he's doing right now. We see Shadowq in the front line, Benji zoning out. We heard one word from Benji like, we can kill them, right? We can do this. Yep. And then at the end there, I think that was Homiefe we heard, what did we do wrong? I mean, I don't know if he was referencing one specific play at the end, or if it was, okay guys, we won, but what mistakes did we make, or did we make? And again, you know, I don't really think that was denial playing out of their minds. I think a lot of that was really Envy playing poorly.
Yeah, I mean, that win, make no bones about it, that was just served up on a silver platter, and that one really went the way that that Denial wanted it to. That's going to get them 1 point. Of course, they got to finish off the next one to see if they can get all 3 like Soar did, and we'll certainly see if that one winds up positive.
Envy really struggling right now on LAN. This is not the team I had expected. I don't think this is the team that Envy had expected. Yeah. They definitely thought they would be more confident coming in here, and you know, this isn't impossible for them. Obviously, they've lost their first 3 games, but the thing about this group is that, you know, if Sword, Denial, and Enemy all start taking games and splits off each other, they're going to be able to stay in this one.
You know, I thought Envy coming into this one, they've had a lot of time to prepare. I kind of thought we'd see a little bit more brush up. What do you guys think?
Thanks, Tom, and Adonis as well. And there you can see on the screen all the hardware that is used by the players here at hi-rez Studios SteelSeries Professional Gaming Gear. You can get yours right now. The official hardware sponsor of hi-rez Esports. Now, into Game 1 discussion.
That was brutal. Just like, putting it honestly, that was really brutal from EnVyUs. They just lost the first set. They clearly didn't really adapt to any style heading into game 1 of the second set. We saw Skeeledon play the Kuang this time after losing very convincingly against Annenster, and he couldn't pull off the same effect.
Yannick, obviously you were on the side of Envy for a little while yourself, right? And this seems to be still stemming back to there. They're still not a cohesive unit at the moment, it seems.
Almost the same problems from the spring split, I would say. It was sort of a slow bleed, especially after Kiki got picked. Leveling up the heart bomb instead of waiting to save a point to level up the dash. Pretty sloppy. Sloppy picks getting picked on Envy's side, and I would say no real... At some point in the game, you have to say, okay, we're behind. We need to make a play to get us back in the game. Otherwise, we're going to get further and further behind, and there's no way we're going to be able to get back in this game. They never made any proactive plays. Never decided to take the initiative and try and claw their way back into the game. And in the end, they just lose.
And honestly, that's Denial's strategy, to just group up as 5. You guys played against Denial a bunch of times, right? How often do they do that against you guys when you scrim them?
I would say that's more of a LAN thing of everyone 5v5s at the start of the game. If you're caught out warding by yourself, that's just an instant disadvantage for your team, so it's much safer just to group up as 5, find those wards, and then reset and start the game.
Well, we've seen PolarBearMike on the side of Envy so far today. We saw some Ymir earlier on where he got focused, and then again in that game as the Erlang Shen. A lot of focus put into him. Totally here. Do we expect to see PolarBear maybe go for a classic Guardian we're used to seeing, just to give him a little bit, you know, get him settled a little bit, less focused?
The thing about Erlang Shen's support is you're trying to set up your mid laner, but when you're playing Cupid in the mid lane, that's not the best kind of setup you really want. You want to have more of those high magical burst gods, the Raws, the Kukulkans, the Scylas, something that has that burst. And I think that if they're going to run Erlang Shen next time, put it in the solo lane, because there wasn't that much of a shutdown onto Benji playing the Amaterasu. We saw Benji just out-rotating CycloneSpin in the earlier stages.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me, because Bellona versus Amaterasu should be a lane that Bellona wins out and out, right? You never really saw Cyclone using that advantage to put his team ahead. They never really invaded the blues together, never really forced any fights with the speed buff. Obviously, we're not watching this lane all the time, so we don't really know the intricacies of that matchup, but that should be a place where Envy should be able to find a lead as CycloneSpin in that matchup.
Well, they did try and do the best there, Envy, but it wasn't good enough, it seemed, overall in that game 1. Game 2, what adaptations do we expect in Tolly?
Well, I think, like we mentioned before, definitely at least want to put the Erlang Shen into CycloneSpin's hands. Maybe have Skeeledon camping, because Kuang Cupid wasn't that impactful, but Kuang Erlang Shen against Amaterasu, now you're talking about a different story where you're starting to get CycloneSpin ahead. He's the one making the rotations. He's the one making up the cleanup kills.
Is Cupid the problem, or is it Skeeledon not combining well with Kiki in the mid lane?
I really don't want to see Kiki play Cupid mid again this tournament. I think there's a lot of much better options that you can find, and really if you're looking to play a Hunter middle, you're trying to find an early advantage, maybe even an early cheese kill with Cupid. Cupid doesn't really have like the wave clear or the 2v2 fight that's really heads in far ahead of other mages, so I really would like him to see go back to a traditional mage.
I will be honest as well, so I mean, when we see this Cupid coming out as well, the Cupid for me as a whole, it seems to be like he's there because he is a secondary initiator, if not a primary initiator, Kiki, at the moment, which I don't think is really what his team his team needs him to be, but what he doesn't want to be, with this having to use the Fields of Love for initiation, and that's why he's playing it.
I wouldn't be surprised if he continues the style, maybe go away from the Cupid, maybe go for the Neith middle. We saw how effective Vetium was on that Neith, where he was actually able to get a solo kill onto Oceans playing the Chronos, where he was able to play so aggressive that he unfortunately just mistimed his ultimate, thinking he would get the rewind off in time, didn't really quite find it there. So I want to see more. I wouldn't mind the utility, just not necessarily Cupid. It's not been working out for them.
What would you rather see instead of the Cupid then?
Maybe a Neith, maybe a Ra to see if they can get a Ra. I know Kiki has a good Ra. Maybe an Aphrodite. Just not the Cupid. I don't really see what it brings to the table.
It's a good point. I mean, surprisingly enough, I mean, supportive God, Ra, Kiki, supportive player, mid lane.
I mean, he's been playing all these janky picks, I would say, in mid back in the day with AFK when he was playing Fenrir middle, Athena middle every now and then. And that's when they had Incon, Weekend, and Allied on the team, where they would have all these flex picks where they would switch this Athena between 4 different positions. Same with the Fenrir.
Very interesting.